Hey guys and girls, it's David with Beagles on Fire. Been a while since I've come on here and done a video like this. Ought to have my tail whooped for not doing some earlier, but just been crazy times and life's gotten away, and it just, it's no excuse. You got to let things, you got to keep things in order and make it happen. And I haven't done that like I should. So thought I'd do this. Riding down the road right now, actually headed on a trip to see some grandbabies and do some rabbit hunting. So it doesn't really get any better than that. But my wife's driving, so I thought I'd do a quick video shoot here. And was thinking, I told this story to a guy the other night, and I thought, I've never done a shoot on this. I never have told people, and it's a really unique story about how I really got into beagles. So I thought I'd go back and just relive that and let you know how that went. And so when I was a little kid, of course, my parents were missionaries overseas, but there were some times when, before we went overseas, I got to hunt with my uncle doing some rabbit hunting, but I never owned my own beagles until 2003. Now, prior to 2003, I had been a deer hunter, and deer hunted, one of them guys that went to the stand before it got daylight by 45 minutes to make sure that everything had calmed down. Sometimes stay in the woods all day. If I did come down, I would come down and, sneak my way looking for deer all the way back to the truck, go grab a sandwich, then do some, walking looking for deer, and then go get in the stand in the afternoon and all that. And I lived in Atlanta, and it was 3 hours plus to get to the deer club, and I was dedicated and did all that stuff. And one of them deer hunters that would have probably been like most deer hunters and would have hated to know that somebody was going to come with any beagles to run rabbits, even after season, for fear they would run a big buck off, A lot of things have changed since then, but when I came up here to Mississippi from Georgia, my father had bought a farm, a 700-acre farm, and I really just thought I had died and gone to heaven. I didn't know what to do with myself. If you've been in a club, you know that when you're the new member in a club, you've got limited places because, John's going to the same stand he's been to. He's been a member of this club for 20 years. Everybody and their brother is going to hunt the power line, and anytime a deer sticks his head out, it's going to get a bullet whizzed at it. So you're going to have to go find a place way off the beaten path where nobody else is. So good luck with that. Well, now I went from that scenario to being the guy who was in charge of 700 acres, could do anything I wanted to do, put a stand anywhere I wanted to put it, and not have to worry was anybody else going to be in that stand. And so I really thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I had stands everywhere and could go anywhere I wanted to go, play the wind right every time I went, and all that. But when deer season was over, I was like a lot of guys. I was like, man, what do we do now? I really want to go hunt something. And so I saw this guy's sign that said, Beagle Chase Guide Service. We'll hunt on your land or mine. And I thought, wow, that'd be fun to do. Let me give him a call. So for a year or two, I didn't call him, whatever. Then finally I did call him. And he would show up and bring a bunch of dogs, bring lunch. And man, back then, I was like a lot of guys that rabbit hunt now, or guys that you take. You don't know anything about the dogs. You're just out there to shoot. And if you kill rabbit by kicking it up, or one of the dogs aren't even running or whatever, at the end of the day, it's how many you put on the tailgate and all that. But so I didn't really appreciate the dogs like I do now. But I would do that with him, and we'd pay him, and we'd reschedule, and we'd do 2 or 3 hunts a year. And I thought, man, I really want to do this. I really want to do this anytime I want to go. I want to own my own dogs. And so I got into the desire to want to own them. Didn't have anybody I knew to go get them from. And the 700 acres that my father had bought, that we still own, those of you that have been and stayed at the lodge, that's that property that I'm talking about. Backed up to that property was 900 and something acres of what was called Dunn Shooting Preserve. And they did these quail hunts and pheasant hunts where they put the quail and the birds out for the people. Anyhow, in 2003, it went up for sale at an auction. And so my father wanted to go to the auction to see if the land went cheap enough because it joined us. Well, it did not go cheap enough. But while we were there, several things were for sale. Among that being about 19 bird dogs that were for sale. Now, you'd have to know my father. If my father was in the South and somehow they were selling igloos and it was a deal, he would buy those igloos because it's too good of a deal to pass up. And then he would have to go build something like a freezer to keep the igloos intact. I watched my father do this on some different occasions where he went and literally bought over 8 18-wheeler trailer loads of stuff and then had to build a building to put it all in. So I'm not exaggerating when I tell you he would not pass up a deal. Well, these bird dogs started going, and this was in April of 2003, and these bird dogs started selling. The first one sold for $600, and they kept whittling down from there. Long story short, they got down to, I think, $200, $250, and my father said, you need to buy them, you need to buy them. I said, I don't want bird dogs, I wanted beagles. I don't know anything about bird dogs. He said, well, that's a deal. So the next round, there were 6 of them left, and he bid $175 and bought all of them. And I'm like, what are we doing with bird dogs? We don't need bird dogs. I wanted beagles. Well, we got them. We had to hurry up, put some kennels together, and put them in that. And my father's always been overweight, and he had a nutritionist that was helping him with his meals. So he shared with the nutritionist. He said, well, I think my son's upset with me because I bought these bird dogs, and we don't know anything about bird dogs. And the nutritionist said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I happened to rent a room from a guy that is the president of the Tennessee chapter of Quail Unlimited. I'll get him in touch with you. He said, well, have him call my son. So this guy called me by the name of Jim Pierce, that at that time was the president of the chapter of Quail Unlimited for the state of Tennessee. He come out, and he said, don't tell me anything about what they told you about these dogs. I'm going to assess them. I said, okay. So he said, go get one and put it on a lead. So I did. Brought the dog over there to him, and we stopped. He told the dog, whoa, whoa, and the dog sat there and trembled. If you've ever been around bird dogs, they'll sit there and shake and tremble. They're excited. They want to go hunting. And the dog stood there, and he lifted his tail up, stroked his tail, made him point, said, whoa, good stuff and all that, whoa. Unclipped the lead, and the dog just stood there, and he tapped it on the rear end and said, all right, go hunt him up. And the dog went down this bush hog trail and was, how bird dogs do, bouncing back and forth. And he blew the whistle, and he pointed to the right. The dog went to the right and hunted. He blew the whistle again. The dog come out. He pointed to the left. The dog went to the left. He blew a long whistle twice, and the dog came back. He said, all right, put that dog up. And we had 6 of these. The first 5 did exactly what I've told you in that scenario. There were 2 English setters and 4 English pointers. Well, the last dog that I went and got was a little young, probably about 1.5 years, 1.5-year-old female, and she acted more like a bass on a line. She flopped every which way. She had never been on a lead. She didn't whoa. She didn't do anything, and he unclipped her, and she took off down the trail, and he blew the whistle, and she just kept getting smaller and smaller, went out of sight. We never found her. We totally lost that dog because she had not been trained at all. But we had 5 bird dogs. And the guy started telling me, he said, well, this is what you got to do. You need to get you a couple of surrogators, need to raise birds, you need to do all kinds of predator control, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I said, that's all good and fine, but I wanted some beagles. He said, you want some beagles? I said, I do. I want a pack of beagles. He said, well, I work with a guy that's got the best beagles there ever was and that I've ever seen. And I'm like, well, people will tell you that kind of stuff, I've heard, but whatever. Long story short, that is how I ended up with the beagles that I have now. See, Jim worked with the guy named Larry Naylor that had done this bloodline that I have. And you say, well, David, where are you going with this story? What I'm trying to tell you is we don't always know the way that we're going to get to what we really want. Sometimes when we head down a certain way, we think we're not going to what we want. but God has a plan that he uses to get us where we want to be and where we need to be. And so, there's a couple of verses that I want to share with you. And one's Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper." And I think God has a sense of humor, obviously, because he made me, and several of you are like me as far as humor. So God has to have a sense of humor. He wouldn't make people like me. But he has a sense of humor sometimes in that he looks down and he sees we've got these plans, and he's like, well, let me throw you this curveball here sometimes. And we think it's to hurt us. I thought, why in the world are we getting bird dogs? The whole reason that we ended up with bird dogs, I'm totally convinced, was God wanted to put Jim Pierce in my path to introduce me to Larry Naylor and get me where I needed to be. If that had never happened, I wouldn't end up with the bloodline and the Beagles that I have today. And so, sometimes you wonder why certain things come your way, and really you doubt what's going on. But in the end, it works out. It says that all things work together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose, is another verse in the Bible. And then there's another one here that is Psalm 37:23. "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way." I would love to tell you that I had total faith in all that, but back then at that particular time, I was not really involved in church like I needed to be or anything like that. And God was still looking out for me because I was one of his children, and it's just a unique story that I was headed down a road and I really didn't know where to go to get dogs. Ended up with dogs I wasn't looking for, wasn't even the breed I was looking for. But all that was used for me to end up where I needed to be in the grand scheme of things. And all these years later, it's obvious that was a good thing that we ended up with bird dogs to end up with the Beagles that I have. So I just want to encourage you that even though you may think, why are certain things happening to me? It's all going to work out in the end. Just keep the faith and believe, and don't look at it as God's against you. Sometimes the things that he's got you in are there for the reason to put you where not only you need to be, but really where you want to be. See, that was a desire of mine to have Beagles. It wasn't a need, it was a want. Now that I have Beagles, I would say I need Beagles, in my life. But really, being honest, it was a want. It was a desire. And God gave me the desire of my heart, but he did it in a unique way by making me go around the world, so to speak, to end up where I wanted to be. So I hope that encourages you today, that when you find yourself in something that you question, there's been a whole lot of things been going on in my life with different things that you wonder, why in the world is this going on? Sometimes down the road you'll look back and you'll go, well, now I understand. Sometimes you won't ever understand, but God always has our heart where it needs to be. He wants us to give us the desires of our heart if we will just listen, pay attention, and trust him. So I encourage you to do that today. Sorry the lighting's bad here. It's getting close to dark, but appreciate my wife driving me down the road so I could make this little video. Hope it's been a blessing to you, and I'll try to get back on track of doing these videos and sending them out. So feel free to share this, comment, whatever. If you've got a funny story of something God has took you around the world to, feel free to put that in the comments. But a lot of people wonder, how did I end up where I ended up with Beagles? And I don't say that to think I'm something special, but God was definitely in it from the beginning to use something like that to put me in the right place to get to where I needed to be. So sometimes we going down the road and we hit a detour and we wonder, why did we not get to go down the road we intended? But the detour will bring you back to where you need to be. So I hope that's helpful to you. Y'all have a great day.